A young father is found guilty of the murder of his 2-week-old son. Daniel Sanzoni violently shook 13-day-old Joshua Millison to death, having battered him in the days before his death. Also this lunchtime, Hillary hits out as the tide appears to be turning Trump's way.
I am sick and tired of the negative, dark, divisive, dangerous vision and behavior of people who support Donald Trump.
The mystery death of a soldier on an RAF firing range in Scotland. The Defence Ministry is still investigating. And the Prime Minister gives FIFA a red card for their ban on England's footballers wearing the poppy.
I think the stance that's been taken by FIFA is utterly outrageous.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. 13-day-old Joshua Millison died from catastrophic brain damage. He'd also suffered 12 broken bones and what the court was told were irreversible injuries. His father, Daniel Sanzoni, did it at the family home in Wolverhampton. And in the last hour, he's been found guilty of his baby son's murder. Joshua's mother, Zoe Howell, was found not guilty of causing or allowing Joshua's death. Ben Chapman was in court to hear those verdicts.
Joshua Millison had been in the world just 13 days when he was shaken so violently by his father he was left brain dead and unable to breathe. 13 days in which Daniel Sanzoni had already twisted and squeezed his baby son, breaking 12 of his bones. He'd been left alone with Joshua in the living room of their house when his mother says she heard a thud. This is the 999 call that followed.
Is the patient awake?
No, he's a little baby. He's 2 weeks old.
Are you sure he's not breathing?
Is he breathing? No, he's not breathing. Oh, God.
Joshua's mother, Zoe Howell, who came to court hooded and clutching a teddy bear, was cleared of turning a blind eye, despite telling police Sanzoni had a temper and was rough with the baby. The injuries to Joshua's brain were some of the worst that doctors had ever seen, described as catastrophic and irreversible. He died a month later when his life support was switched off.
These are the people that are meant to have cared for Joshua and provided him with a safe environment, loving, caring, and they failed to do that.
Zoe Howell told police there were signs about Sanzoni. Former friends say he had a troubled childhood, a violent temper, and was himself brought up in care. A serious case review is now underway to discover if authorities could have done more to protect Joshua from his own father. There were cries of yes from the public gallery as first that conviction of Daniel Sanzoni was delivered in the last hour. He put his head in his hands. And then again, as Joshua's mother, Zoe Howell, was cleared of any wrongdoing, and she and her own mother hugged both of them in tears in the public gallery. The judge described this as a tragic and distressing case, and Daniel Sanzoni will be sentenced now tomorrow.
Ben, thank you. Now, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Hillary Clinton slipped from slam dunk favourite to being the candidate under pressure. And from her tightening corner, she fought back with anger. She laid into Donald Trump over his claims her husband Bill was a rapist and said the Republicans' campaign had demeaned America. Trump turned calmer on the campaign trail, hardly mentioning Mrs. Clinton. He urged voters to think again and not to make a decision that they would regret. We're with both campaigns. First, Robert Moore from a feisty Camp Clinton.
Hillary Clinton is on the defensive and racing through Florida, trying to secure this crucial battleground state against what appears to be considerable Trump momentum. During her speech here last night, she was interrupted by a protester who shouted out that Bill Clinton was a rapist. And she reacted with a passion and an anger we have rarely seen from her.
And you know, I am sick and tired of the negative, dark, divisive, dangerous vision and behavior of people who support Donald Trump.
The big guns are now being called in to help her campaign. The biggest of them all was deployed last night into the battleground of Ohio. The president pleaded with Americans to give Mrs. Clinton what he called a fair shot, saying she was being judged by entirely different standards.
You know, there's a reason why we haven't had a woman president before. And I think that sometimes, you know, we're kind of trying to get over the hump. Hillary Clinton is consistently treated differently than just about any other candidate I see out there.
The next president of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was last night campaigning in the heartland state of Wisconsin, boosted by some encouraging polls. He even suggested that those who have already cast a ballot in early voting for Clinton might want to change their mind.
For any Democratic voter who are having a bad case of buyer's remorse. In other words, you want to change your vote. Wisconsin is one of several states where you can change your early ballot if you think you've made a mistake. A lot of stuff has come out since you voted.
Thank you all.
For the next week, Mrs. Clinton and her opponent will crisscross no more than a dozen states where this election will be decided. A high-stakes end to the most venomous presidential campaign in living memory. Robert Moore, ITV News, in Florida.
And our correspondent Penny Marshall is now in Florida too, where Donald Trump is due later. Penny, Florida is a key battleground in this race. How tight is it?
It's incredibly tight, and I've just got the figures actually for the early voting here in Florida. It's one of the early voting states. More than 4 million have cast their votes already here. And as of this morning, within the last hour, we know that the Republicans are just a hair's breadth in front. So Donald Trump lands here feeling that there's some momentum behind him. For him, Florida is a necessity, not a luxury. The way the Electoral College works here, Trump can't get to the White House without Florida. Hillary Clinton actually can, but for both candidates, this really is a must-win seat.
And what are you expecting to hear from Trump when he arrives, Penny?
Well, yesterday when I was in Philadelphia with Donald Trump, I saw a very different man, measured, calm, not ad-libbing, sticking to a very strategic domestic message. That might be the same here, we're waiting to see. But what he's going to do is hammer home his strategy to depress the Latino and African American vote here and bring out the white working class vote for him.
Penny, thank you. And you can watch the election live here on ITV next week. Trump versus Clinton, the result is on Tuesday night and through the night, starting at 10:40 p.m. Here, police are investigating the death of a soldier during a training exercise in the Scottish Highlands. It happened yesterday evening at RAF Tain, a military range north of Inverness. Well, Damon Green is there for us live now. Damon, what have you been able to find out about this?
Well, very little, I'm afraid. At the moment, the Tain Air Weapons Range here north of Inverness is a huge site. Normally it would be controlled by the RAF, but today it's very tightly controlled by Police Scotland, who have secured the entire extensive range of this base. Their focus is not on the large air weapons range that's used by the RAF and other air forces, but one of the two small arms ranges in use by the British Army. That, we understand, is where the fatality took place. It's still a very, very large area, and earlier we had a briefing from a senior officer of Highlands and Islands Division of Police Scotland who had this to tell us.
From the very outset, the military have been very supportive to ourselves with regards to the investigation. We're very clear in terms of who has lead and ownership of the investigation. I'm pleased to say the military are supporting us with regards to the management of the scene here, but also particularly importantly with the family, making sure that they're getting support at what is a very difficult time.
Well, locals say that the soldiers in training here at Tain over the last few days have been from the Black Watch Regiment based at Fort George near Inverness. And it's just over 2 months since another soldier from the Black Watch was killed, Private Conor McPherson, killed on a live fire exercise at Otterburn in Northumberland. Police here very anxious to see if this was an accident or if a crime has been committed.
Damon, thank you. The last remaining children at the so-called Calais jungle are being evacuated this lunchtime. Buses have been taking the young people to locations across France, where their applications for asylum in the UK and France will be processed. Home Office workers are on the buses with the children. Nick Wallace has the latest.
They are the unwanted victims of other people's wars. Today, the child migrants of Calais were being bussed out of the region to one of 60 dedicated holding centres scattered across France.
Goodbye.
But not all were happy to leave.
We don't want to go to war. We want to go England, only England, no France.
The Calais jungle camp was cleared earlier this week, but 1,500 children remain behind, living in shipping containers while the British and French governments argued. Now their bids to claim asylum in Britain will be assessed at their new locations.
British officials are getting ready to go into each processing centre and then to oversee the miners' departures from France.
Most are expected to leave Calais quietly, but many don't want to go.
We have asked them what will happen to children who will not get on the buses, and we've been given no response so far. We're concerned that, like many children already have, they will disperse and sleep rough. One child told us that he would planning on sleeping under a bush and living off eating grass, which is just, it's really horrific to think.
This was not a good environment for young people. Carlos from Darfur didn't want his face filmed. He says he felt abandoned by the authorities.
I stayed in the jungle for 4 months and 12 days. Every day I tried, but it's very difficult. They are saying, you are young, we can help you. But they are not helping me.
70 busloads have left Calais already this morning. The camp is expected to be cleared within 2 days. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
Our national editor Allegra Stratton is in Calais and she has this update on what will happen now to those children.
We understand from our sources that they're taking them to far-flung corners of France on purpose, so to the south of France and to the Alps, because they don't want them to easily be able to make it back to Calais. Why would they try to do that? Well, because a lot of these children right now still believe they're heading to the United Kingdom. When they find out they're actually being taken to other parts of France, they may not be so happy. Now, does all of this mean the British government is off the hook? No, it doesn't. As we speak, we have 2 Home Office officials on each coach going around France. They're trying to process the claims and figure out which of the children are eligible while on board the coaches. We think, according to charities here, that some 800 of the children currently here do have good claims to come to the United Kingdom. It will be very difficult for those Home Office officials to process those claims aboard the coaches, but now that's their only option.
Stratton reporting. Still to come this lunchtime, the ban on footballers wearing poppies. Now the Prime Minister has her say. And a tribute to some medical pioneers who helped those injured in war. But first, prison officers concerned about their own safety are due to meet with the Justice Secretary today. The number of assaults in jails in England and Wales is at a record high, averaging 65 every day. Prison officers are not allowed to go on strike, but they had been threatening to hold public meetings outside prisons to publicly voice their concerns. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
Protest meetings were to have been held outside prisons in England and Wales this morning. In the end, prison officers called them off, pending talks with the Justice Secretary this afternoon. But there is little doubt prisons are in a state of crisis. Attacks against staff and between prisoners are rising rapidly. Prison officers say austerity has led to staff cuts, which has led to violence.
It's been catastrophic. It's been a bloodbath in prisons, and that's just been getting worse year on year. There's no control, there's no security, jails are flooded with drugs, mobile phones, the assaults and violence are off the charts. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
You use the term bloodbath, that's a strong word to use.
You could call that strong, but we're having 16 members a day assaulted, we're having over 50 prisoners a day assaulted, we've got self-harm, we've got suicide, there's instances of assault continuously. There is blood over everyone's hand in this, and mainly government and the employers.
And it is getting worse. The number of assaults on prison staff was up 43% in the 12 months to June, while prisoner-on-prisoner incidents have also risen by around a third, and the number of deaths in prison custody has increased by 21% over the last year. The Ministry of Justice say £14 million a year has already been announced to pay for 400 extra officers for the 10 most challenging prisons. And tomorrow, the Justice Secretary is expected to announce major reforms to the entire prison system. In the Queen's speech earlier this year, the government said the prisons bill would be the biggest shake-up of the system since Victorian times and would hand governors control over their own budgets. Critics will argue that's of limited use when they don't even have the money to hire enough staff. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
Campaigners have won a High Court battle over what they call the government's continuing failure to tackle national air pollution. Client Earth says air pollution is a public health crisis, and the court's ruling called the government's plan to tackle it woefully inadequate. Well, Sally Lockwood is overlooking central London for us live this lunchtime. So, Sally, what is it that the government's getting wrong?
Well, it seems they're simply not going far enough, Alistair, to clean up pollution in inner cities like the one you can see behind me, despite the government itself estimating that pollution is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths each year. This is the second time the government has lost in court on this issue in the last 18 months. And the revelations in today's hearing have shown that the initial draft to tackle the problem planned for 17 cities to become low emission zones, but this was cut to just 5 cities on cost grounds. We also learned that the Treasury blocked plans to charge diesel cars for entering badly polluted towns and cities to avoid a motorist backlash. Campaigners have said that today's ruling by the judge is as much moral as it is legal.
This is enormously significant for the health of everyone in Britain. We have almost 40,000 people a year dying early of air pollution, and the government has been told today by the court it will need to come into compliance as soon as possible. That will save a lot of lives.
The government has said it will not appeal today's decision, and in a statement it said improving air quality is a priority for this government, whilst our huge investment in green transport initiatives and plans to introduce clean air zones around the country will help tackle this problem. We accept the court's judgment. We will now carefully consider this ruling and our next steps in detail. Well, these next steps will need to be decided quickly. They have just 1 week to agree a new plan before the court imposes a timetable on them to do so.
Sally, thank you. The Prime Minister has this lunchtime added her voice to the row over whether international footballers can wear poppies on Armistice Day. England play Scotland at Wembley on November the 11th. A day later, Wales face Serbia in Cardiff. FIFA bans political, religious or commercial messages on shirts. Well, the Prime Minister had this to say a short while ago.
I think the stance that's been taken by FIFA is utterly outrageous. Our football players want to recognise and respect those who have given their lives for our safety and security. I think it is absolutely right that they should be able to do so. I think it's for our football associations, but I think a clear message is going from this House. We want our players to be able to wear those poppies, and I have to say to FIFA that before they start telling us what to do, they jolly well ought to sort their own house out.
Well, our sports correspondent Ian Payne joins me live now with yet another development.
Yeah, this has become much more intriguing today. Now, FIFA don't like the poppy. They forbid political references and emblems on shirts because they say this is a reference to war, and if they allowed that, then any country could wear anything to do with the war that they were involved with. Back in November 2011, we had this problem again when England played Spain, and we got round it because England were allowed to wear a poppy, not on the shirt, but on black armbands, as you can see. Seems to be the obvious solution again, but the Scottish FA, whose team, of course, play England on Friday week, they say they've been told by FIFA you're not allowed to wear the black armbands either. So that's when it gets more intriguing. We spoke to the chairman of the FA, the English FA, who are due to speak with FIFA tomorrow. They're flying in FIFA to speak to him. And this is what Greg Clark told ITV News earlier.
What we've been doing, we're balancing respect for the fallen and their families with respect for the world governing body, and we're negotiating in good faith with FIFA to try and find a solution, but there will be poppies at Wembley.
So whether they're worn or not, we don't know. If FIFA ban the poppy and England decide to wear it on the shirt or on the armbands, they could be punished, and the maximum punishment would be being docked World Cup qualifying points, so it's serious.
OK, Ian, thank you. And finally, they were called the guinea pigs, a group of service personnel burned and badly injured during the Second World War. They took their name from the pioneering treatment that they received, the first to be given what we now call plastic surgery. Well, today the Duke of Edinburgh is to unveil a monument honouring members of the group. And Rupert Evelyn is at the National Memorial Arboretum in Burton-on-Trent in Staffordshire for us live this lunchtime. Rupert, underline for us, if you will, the importance of today.
Well, I think the legacy of Sir Archibald Mackindo lives on today in much of the plastic surgery that takes place all over the world. It was pioneering surgery at the time on people who'd been very badly burnt, often air crewmen whose planes had come down. And he really was setting the pace and setting the agenda for this type of work. As a result of what he set up, it became known as the Guinea Pig Club, the patients that he worked with. And their lasting legacy is felt by those few survivors today, one of whom I caught up with just a little while ago.
They taught me to endure. That alters your personality, and for the better, I think. It was a wonderful, wonderful club, inspirational.
Extraordinary to hear you say that, given what it takes to be a member of it.
Yes, well, all the members are proud of having been a patient.
Well, Sir Archibald Mackindo understood not just the physical aspect of injuries, but very importantly the mental aspect. And he understood that people who'd been badly injured needed to have fun and enjoyment. He encouraged them, brought beer onto the wards in the hospital. You know, the Guinea Pig Club was a club that none of these people would have chosen to be a part of. But having been a member of, they're all very proud to have been.
Indeed so, Rupert. Thank you. And that's it. The evening news is next, but from all of us for now, very good afternoon to you. Bye-bye.